Hi guys, welcome back to the channel, FPL Consult here, and today we're going to take a look at a Game Week 28 free hit team. Now, these are my favorite kind of videos because I can totally forget about all the other fixtures in the other game weeks and just focus on the 7 fixtures here that we have in Game Week 28, and that's what you would be doing if you are on a free hit in Game Week 28. So hopefully this video is helpful for those of you guys who are activating the chip, and if you do enjoy it, please give it a like and also subscribe as well if you are new around here. So seven fixtures that we have here in Game Week 28, and basically the teams that you would want to target is Newcastle, Aston Villa, Tottenham, Chelsea, and Arsenal, right? As for the other teams like Brentford, Leicester, Wolves, Leeds, maybe you can go with a sprinkle of some other assets from these teams, but the ones that I just mentioned are those that you probably would want to target, right? So we're going to go with a 4-3-3 formation. That's because for these set of 7 fixtures, the way I've analyzed it, I've basically picked out that the high ceiling players are the ones in defense and also the ones in the forward positions. Now, there aren't a lot of very good midfielders, so the obvious ones will be later on as we will move on to the midfielders, you guys will see, but there aren't many good midfield options other than the obvious ones, right? So I would focus my cash or the budget that I have on this team mainly in defense and also up front in attack, as you guys will see later on. Right, so we're going to start off with a 4-3-3 and we're going to have 4 defenders in goal. Right, we're going to have Nick Pope in goal first. Now, Nick Pope, obviously against Nottingham Forest away, I do fancy this Newcastle defense, who is one of the better defenses in the league throughout the course of the season. Right, so I do fancy them to keep a clean sheet against Nottingham Forest, and that's why I've gone for a double up of Nick Pope and Trippier in defense as well. Right, now, for the other 3 defenders, Zinchenko, Medicash, and Chilwell, I've gone for Zinchenko to cover that Arsenal clean sheet there, which we will probably get given that they're playing Crystal Palace at home, right, and they are generally a better side at home, and on top of that, Zinchenko has good attacking threat as well. Same goes for Medicash and Chilwell, where they are playing home games as well. Easy home games, Bournemouth for Medicash, and Everton for Chilwell. Now, I am aware that Bournemouth and Everton respectively are coming off big wins in the weekend that just passed, right? Big 1-0 wins for both of these teams, right? So basically, I do understand that they may be on the up, but on paper, fixtures-wise, I would still favor Aston Villa to beat Bournemouth and also Chelsea to win Everton, and that's why we're going to go with Medicash and Chilwell. Right, in the event that they do concede, there is still the attacking returns that we can fall back on for both these players. Now, on the bench, before we move on to the midfielders, I have Kepa, Sarabia, Almiron, and Kilman. Now, straight away you guys can see that the midfield options aren't great, right? So that's why I've gone for Sarabia and Almiron as probably the only ones that I would potentially want, right, to come into the team if we do get some starting 11 players that end up not playing, right? But that probably wouldn't be the case, especially on a free hit, right? But Sarabia against Leeds, I do fancy him, right? He has looked quite sharp ever since he's come into that Wolves team. Almiron as well, we know what he's capable of this season, and he plays Nottingham Forest away, so a good fixture for him, right? As for the other 2 players on the bench, Kepa would be the substitute keeper. I do fancy him at home, right? And of course, he has quite a high ceiling if he is to come in, where usually if he keeps a clean sheet, he would get 3 bonus points as well, right? So, but he's on the bench for now. I still do favor Pope ahead of Kepa. And then last on the bench is Kilman, right, to cover that Wolves at home clean sheet. Now, generally at home, I do fancy Wolves to keep a clean sheet. Now, against Leeds, I would still expect them to do so, right? But in the event that we do need him, Kilman will come in, but he is last on the bench still, right? So let's now move on to the midfielders. Now in midfield, we're going to go with Maddison, Martinelli, and Saka. And outside of these 3 players, I think there really aren't a lot of good options out there, right? That's why I have Sarabia and Almiron as potential bench options, but they're really cheap as well, and I probably wouldn't start them ahead of any of these 3 midfielders. So these 3 are the standout ones I feel for Game Week 28. Maybe changing Martinelli for Odegaard if he is fit, right? Potentially that is something that I would do, right? But aside from that, I think I would just go with a midfield that would be made up of 2 Arsenal players, one being Saka, and then Maddison as the Leicester asset in midfield that I would want to have, right? So Going for two Arsenal midfielders, I've chosen Saka for obvious reasons. He's on penalties, and on top of that, he's the man in form for Arsenal as well, right? So definitely gonna have him in the team as part of the Arsenal triple up. Martinelli, I slightly prefer him to Odegaard simply because of the positions he's been taking up in recent games, and because of that, I think there is a higher chance that he does get FPL returns, and that's why I've gone for Martinelli here. And I'm not too worried about the threat of Jesus coming back in and maybe Martinelli shifting back to the left wing. I think that will take quite a while, right, before Jesus is actually back into the starting 11. I doubt he would be back in immediately, and that's why I think going for Martinelli here, right, kind of makes sense. And then we're going to go with Maddison. Now, Maddison is probably the only Leicester asset that I feel is good to have at this point in time and paying that money for, right? He is pretty expensive at 8 point something million, right? So I do feel like Maddison, because he's on set pieces and the quality of set pieces that he delivers into the box, or even from dead balls when he takes free kicks as well, I think there are many routes for Maddison to get FPL returns, and that's why I would still think that Maddison is the only Leicester asset that I would go for. Right, so aside from that, aside from these three midfielders, I think you can go anywhere else for the other two. Right, I've gone for Sarabia, I've gone for Almiron, but essentially you can go for anyone else. And I would think that in terms of a starting 11, I would just field these three and load up in the defense and also up front as well. So now let's take a look at the forward line. So up front, I think the forward line kind of picks itself. Ollie Watkins, Ivan Toney, and Harry Kane. Now, in terms of these three assets, I think you could potentially swap Ollie Watkins or Ivan Toney for Kai Havertz, who is looking like he is on the up, and he does have a home fixture against Everton in Game Week 28 as well. But at this point in time, I think I still favour Watkins and Toney ahead of Kai Havertz. Right now, Ollie Watkins, of course, Bournemouth at home, so that's a great fixture for him there. Ivan Toney as well. In general, Brentford are a team that play better at home. So even though they are coming off a 1-0 loss to Everton, they are playing at home in Game Week 28, and they play Leicester, who have been very leaky in defense in general, right, since the restart. Right, so I would fancy Ivan Toney for returns here in Game Week 28, and that's why I would go for him. If we are looking to bring Kai Havertz in, I probably would do it for Ollie Watkins, but still, I favour Ollie Watkins ahead of Kai Havertz for now. And then the last one is obviously Mr. Consistent, Harry Kane. We definitely have to have him in our free hit teams, right? Simply because regardless of Spurs' form, no matter how poor or how good they are at this performing, regardless of the result, Kane still gets his FPL points, he still gets assists, he still gets goals, right? And obviously, in terms of consistency of returns, we have seen it this season, right? So Harry Kane, captain for this free hit Game Week 28 team, right? And the vice captain would be Saka. Alright, so this is probably how a Game Week 28 free hit team would look like if I were to use the free hit in Game Week 28, right? And do let me know down in the comments below if there are any glaring players that I'm sleeping on. Are there any players that you are going for that I've missed out in this draft, or any defensive picks up there out of the 4 players that I've chosen in defense, right, that you would go without, right, and which players you would include instead, right? And on top of that, do let me know, right, who you are captaining, because I think Harry Kane would be the standout captain, but if you are captaining someone else, I would be interested to know who you are captaining as well. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give it a like and also subscribe as well if you are new around here, and I'll catch you guys in more Game Week 28 content very soon. Bye bye.